Hey, welcome to the Simnotics. I am Alex, and we are going to be reviewing a smartphone today. The Samsung Galaxy Fold5 has been my daily driver since launch day, so I've been using this as my only phone. The thing is, like, this phone is obviously a premium device. It may very well be one of, if not the most premium device you can purchase in terms of a smartphone on the market today. And being such, there's going to be a lot of expectations for a phone like this. And that's what the Fold line has been. And this is the 5th generation of that. So it should be refined. It should have more benefits than the original Folds. And it should have evolved to a certain point where I think most people should want one because it should provide you with things that you really need. So we're going to see if that's actually the case right now. So let's talk about the Galaxy Fold 5. The Samsung Z Fold 5 is separated. We can separate this review in terms of its main core functionality into two parts: the cover display and then what they call the main display, which is when you open it up for the full experience. We'll talk about the cover display really quick. The cover display is a 6.2 inch display. It has a unique aspect ratio of 23.1 by 9. Yeah, 23.1 by 9. That's a very narrow aspect ratio, and you can actually see it from the structure of the phone. Just looking at it, it looks really long. Although it isn't the main attraction, it doesn't sacrifice much. I mean, it is a Samsung phone and a Samsung display after all. So there's a dynamic AMOLED display. It's a panel that is 904 by 2316p. So it's about a 1080p display. While this cover screen isn't the main reason you'll buy the Fold 5, obviously, you're buying it to open it up and use the full screen. It is likely, though, to be the display that you do use a majority of the time when you're on this phone. That actually turned out to be the case when I started using this phone as my daily driver. Even if you go into ownership thinking, hey, I'm going to use the big screen as much as I possibly can, once you actually are an owner and you start using the phone more and more, you naturally go away from that tablet mode aspect ratio. You naturally pull out your phone and operate it in this cover display. You just kind of do that with your daily routine. The first few weeks I've owned this phone, I tried really hard. I actively tried to open the Fold 5 as much as possible to use it in that type of setting. However, after settling into my daily life, my daily routine, I really only open the phone to its tablet mode like 2 to 4 times a day, if at that. So these are like the just normal smartphone tasks, checking random emails throughout the day or notifications like text messages or my Ring camera. There's no need for me to open the phone up. And also, this cover display is great for idling, like reading. I do love reading articles. Also Reddit browsing in this kind of longer aspect ratio where it's just continuous scrolling. That actually is beneficial in a display like this where it's long, so you have a lot of real estate going in that direction. Where I usually first open up the phone in my day, you're gonna laugh, but it's to play games. It's to do my in-game chores and these gacha games that I play, a lot of these Korean gacha games. The Fold 5 opens up into a 7.6 inch AMOLED panel. So that's a pretty decent size to operate. That's literally 2 of the front ones put together that open up into that 7.6 inch. And it has a resolution of 1812 by 2176p. So this squarish layout is, I would have to say it actually is gorgeous to look at as a unit. It isn't the sharpest on the eyes. Obviously, you know, the PPI count is not going to be anything crazy. It's 373 PPI, but it's sharp enough overall at the size and aspect ratio to be quite enjoyable. If you find a mobile game that scales properly for this aspect ratio, it just really enhances the gaming experience. Like, That's especially so for some of these bigger and newer titles. Like I've been playing the game that I play a lot now is Honkai Star Rail. It's from the same makers as Genshin Impact. Being able to flip the phone open and play it on that 7.6-inch screen, it does really enhance the animations on the attacks. I just it feels a lot more immersive than if I was just playing on a single slab. So whenever I do have the phone open, a lot of people do ask me who have not owned a foldable before. They're like, "Hey, does that crease bother you? You know, that crease going down the center?" Um, Honestly, I don't notice the crease. I haven't actually had any issues with the crease. It's never bothered me. In fact, if you look straight on, you can't really even see it. I mean, if you really are looking for it, you can see it. But one of the reasons why I kind of gloss over it is because one benefit about the Fold 5 in this squarish aspect ratio is that I'm able to use Wallpaper Engine for Android. And I've talked about Engine for Android before, and you see my smartphones all have Wallpaper Engine, this app. But I can utilize kind of the desktop app on this, as in I can use a full wallpaper, almost a full wallpaper. Those 16 by 9, 21 by 10 aspect ratio wallpapers that I love to use in landscape mode, I can use that here instead of having a portrait mode where it's just a 9 by 16 piece of art. So it's a huge difference, the amount of wallpapers and the amount of information I can see because of this enlarged screen over this candy bar shape. So I think Wallpaper Engine has really helped cover up that crease because it's a moving animated wallpaper that I have on my background of my PC, Windows, and laptops and computers. And now I kind of have that same experience on my mobile phone. So I'm honestly not bothered by that crease. And it's because of things like these huge widescreen type wallpapers that really make the Fold 5's experience different and stand out more compared to normal smartphone form factors. Sure, of course, there are plenty of use cases for a large display like this. But to be honest, straight up honest, I don't think any of these are pivotal in swaying public perception about why the Fold 5 is a must-own phone. I just don't have any multitasking tasks that I've come across while using this phone that would tell me that, hey, I can't go back to a single screen anymore. I can't go back to multitasking on a single screen. Don't get me wrong though. I do find certain things beneficial. For example, one thing that really hit a switch for me while using this phone in terms of using that big screen for multitasking. I was on a call. I don't remember. It was either with a doctor or something like that, and they had to keep asking me to enter, things on the dial pad while on the call, and that's kind of annoying because I have to pull up my information from an email or a text message, and so voila, I have my phone app open on one side, and then I have my email or my text message open on the other side, and then I can also have another tab open. And I can seamlessly just look on the right and then type on my left. If I was on any other smartphone, it would be a lot more difficult. Either you have to go to recent apps and swap back and forth with the tap, or you stack them. And since it's a more narrow aspect ratio, like the cover display here, the multitasking is just a small square. So I essentially have two full-size smartphone screens back to back to multitask. So for stuff like that, I did find it very beneficial. Same thing with having a spreadsheet on one side and then having an email open on the other. I did find that actually very beneficial to be able to have that information in front of me on a phone call while also interacting with the phone app, or if I was on a video call where I can mute and still have that video open. So I do see benefits there. Is this a must-have? Is this something that will change my life and I'm just like, I can never go back to a single slab phone? I still don't think so. I honestly, that's not a trade-off that I'm like, oh, I have to do this. I still think I can live with a single slab phone and do the things that I've been doing on this phone just on a single slab phone. Folding the phone also is kind of versatile though in terms of your usage. And one of the first things that I notice about this is I've used a lot of phones with the power button that doubles up as a fingerprint scanner on the frame, on the right side of the frame. And this Samsung obviously has that here. However, it actually makes sense here because this is one of those situations that the power button frame fingerprint scanner is perfectly located for both uses of the cover display and also when you open it up. It's the same kind of grip that you hold on the phone each time. So it does make sense to have it on that spot. So I do think this is a well-designed fingerprint scanner for this phone. Other uses of this phone opened up that just feels natural is having the phone sit on your desk and writing on it like paper. However, that would require you to have an S Pen, which is not included with the purchase, the initial purchase of this phone. I did purchase a S Pen case, the official Samsung one. So I did use the S Pen with this phone for. I gave it a shot, but as a former Note user and an OG Note user at that. I don't know. Maybe I've moved on from the Note, but I just don't find a lot of use cases where I found it useful to have the pen on this form factor. And the reason I say that is the first thing is the cover display does not work with an S Pen. So that is kind of they botched that. I have no idea why Samsung doesn't make that front screen writable with an S Pen. That means that anytime you want to write, you have to open the phone up. And of course, with that big squarish aspect ratio, you do have to grip it. If you're not using a pop socket or one of those like finger sliding things in the back where you can kind of grip it, it is a little dangerous. So I write with my right hand, but I also normally hold my phone with my right hand. So holding your phone with your left hand in this form factor and writing with your right hand is very awkward because you're not holding the phone on the right side. And what I mean by that is when you open the phone up, the glass, the cover screen is on the left side on the back. So if you're holding with your left hand, you don't really have a good grip on there. It's a really funky feeling there. I mean, if you're writing with your left hand and you're holding the phone with your right hand, I guess you can grip it still a little better. But once again, I'm predominantly right-handed. So I just kind of abandoned the S Pen. To be honest, I don't really use it much. And I just don't like holding this phone and using an S Pen. While the Fold 5 is known as a foldable device that kind of becomes a tablet, we kind of forget that it's actually a premium smartphone. So obviously it needs to flow nicely in terms of how it performs. And it does. I have to say it does live up to expectations there thanks to that Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset. The phone is powered by 12 gigabytes of RAM and our model has 512 gigabytes of storage. So those are all big numbers, premium smartphone numbers. So it's excellent for flagship standards. It also has a 4,400 milliamp hour battery that surprisingly lasts very, very long. I haven't had a day where I went less than probably like 30 to 40% on a normal average day use. If I was overboard farming and playing games and doing raids or something like that, I have dropped it to maybe like 20%, and those are at normal days. However, I think the battery life is surprisingly good for a phone that needs to power so many different screens on. The Fold 5 is as snappy as I would expect from a flagship phone, and I do also want to give props to One UI. The software navigating, instantly swapping and switching between information on the cover display and main display, it's almost instant. I actually have not come across any issues on here where maybe something would go wrong transferring from the inside display to the outside display or vice versa. It's been seamless and almost instant in the transition, and the animation and everything just flows well. So I've been very fortunate I haven't come across any bugs here. However, some apps don't resize nicely on the big screen. That is a app developer problem more so than a hardware problem, I believe. Instagram is a prime example of a poorly developed app on this big screen. Instagram has always been bad on tablets, so even though this isn't technically a tablet, it's kind of in that weird aspect ratio where Instagram doesn't work too well. Sometimes it doesn't even open up to occupy the full display, and the interface constantly changes from one layout to another between accounts. It's very strange here. Some games also may resize to the full screen. However, the interfaces may be inconsistent and also potentially like overlay on top of one another. For example, that game that I've been playing, Honkai Star Rail, when you play it and you flip between the displays, it instantly goes and you're still playing the game, and the graphics and everything still runs well, and we don't have any frame drops. However, some of the menus kind of overlap when it kind of mixes the aspect ratios there. So that is something that I do hope we see better from app developers. The Fold 5 also has Qi charging. Obviously, all Samsung phones have Qi charging nowadays. And it also has a 25-watt wired cable charging that charges up the phone pretty fast. So we got a lot of bells and whistles here in the charging department. And I expect that from this premium price tag. Now, where things get a little interesting is of course, the camera setup of the Fold 5. And that's where I guess the premium aspect of this smartphone kind of lags a little bit. I'll just straight up say that it's not a bad camera, obviously. It's actually a very good camera. However, let's just talk about this, right? We have 3 rear sensors, pretty standard stuff. 50 megapixel f1.8 wide. We have a 10 megapixel f2.4 telephoto and a 12 megapixel f2.2 ultra wide lens. The unique aspect, though, about the camera system isn't that part. What we do have that's different is that there's technically 2 sets of selfie cameras, right? Because we do have the cover one and we have the inner display, right? So we need 2 camera systems there. When the phone is closed, the cover screen has a 10 megapixel f2.2 wide sensor. When you open the Fold 5 up, there's a 4 megapixel f1.8 wide camera on the right side of the display. There are practical uses of the cameras that require their availability, such as like face recognition and also video chatting. So that's why you do have a camera on each display to use. Let's just look at some of the photos here. The results in optimal lighting are plenty solid to look at. That should be pretty self-explanatory. Most phones now in optimal lighting give you pretty good results. There's enough detail in the sharpness and also in the clarity to shoot some pretty nice pictures for your social media. I do find low light pictures to be a little bit grainier than I would like to see. But at the same time, it still performs pretty well in darker situations. The Fold 5 handles exposure in auto mode quite well. It rarely, if ever, blows out an image. This is the one aspect that I do find impressive about Samsung this year. They handle exposure in auto mode very well. The processing of the camera is also rather intelligent. I have noticed that it is a lot smarter this year. For the most part, it recognizes face and body shapes. So when it effectively does that whole bokeh effect behind the subjects, it actually targets the subjects pretty well, even animals. It's subtle enough that it doesn't distort the image artificially. So it kind of does look like a DSLR in a certain manner. While I'm satisfied with the camera setup on here, I couldn't help but kind of crave a bit more advancement for a phone with this gigantic price tag, though. So I guess that ends us with that theme of this review. It's a good phone. The Fold 5 is a unique phone that just might be actually the best foldable on the market available to purchase today. However, for a device that costs this amount of money, I do think it is fair to debate whether that money might be better off spent on a phone with the highest premium specs out there over a form factor for multitasking for video watching like this. I think that is a fair discussion to have. Clearly, the Fold 5 and foldables in this form factor have an ideological vision of what they think people will be using smartphones for in the future and even now. And after owning one and purchasing it with my own funds, I can honestly say that even as a technology enthusiast who constantly wants to and needs to kind of experiment and play with the coolest and newest tech, I'm a bit underwhelmed. Obviously, some of this is due to the MSRP of the phone. There always is like this imaginary perception that rarely lives up to reality, and I kind of felt that with the Z Fold 5. It's a terrific smartphone overall, but at least currently, I don't find this form factor to be a must-have for utility. And I personally may think that spending that amount of money on a phone with the highest end specs on a single slab may be more beneficial to a majority of people right now.
So the other day, I was on a Zoom call at work, and I just dropped everything I was saying, and I told them, subscribe.